Welcome to Your Authentic Path to Powerful Leadership with Marsha Clark. Join us on our journey as we're uncovering what it takes to be a powerful woman leader. And Marsha, welcome back.
Thank you. Here we are yet again.
Yes.
So, welcome to our listeners, our viewers. Hopefully you have a chance to watch this as well as listen to it. Thank you, Wendy. And
yes.
Thank you, LaRue.
Yes, we are already at episode 61. So we're well over a year now into this, and that's just super exciting. Well, Marsha, I know that our guest today is super special, so I'm going to let you introduce her.
Absolutely. We have LaRue Eppler here with us today. And LaRue and I met in a group that is fondly and preciously called the Up to Something group.
Oh,
so
I want to be up to something. Wow.
Yeah, and it was fascinating. The name of that group is exactly what it sounds like.
Yes.
We were all up to something, and many of us in a more independent way. And so we had a chance to support one another in our up to somethingness. And so I met LaRue as a part of that group. And after hearing her and her work, knowing the work that I was doing with women, and her work is the work of intuition. So our title today, A Woman's Knowing, is representative of what it means to be a woman and to trust our intuition. We've heard it, we've had it all of our lives, and we've been told don't trust it, and yet what LaRue's here to tell you is to bust that myth all over the place. And LaRue has written a book, and I'm going to let you give all the particulars about all of that. And she's also created a methodology called the Evo-K,
Evo-K method.
Evo-K method, and she has certified, that's a certifiable kind of thing. So I think our listeners are going to really enjoy, because we're going to put some structure and framework around this sort of nebulous thing called intuition. And so we have the expert here. I also want to say, LaRue, really, she wrote chapter 7. I did a little bit of editing, but she wrote chapter 7 in the book. I want to give her all the credit for that. And again, to provide some framework for our listeners and our readers to understand this topic a little more.
Excellent. Wonderful. Okay. So LaRue, before we dive into the content today, I'd like for us to start, as Marsha mentioned, with chapter 7. So Marsha, you open up this chapter of the book with a powerful declaration about the power of intuition. So for our listeners and our viewers who haven't read the book yet, shame on you. But if they haven't read the book yet, please share that story.
Yeah, and this is one that LaRue and I talked about when we first started collaborating and thinking about how we could reinforce and support one another. So this goes back to 2011, so 11 years ago. I was scheduled to go out of country to deliver some leadership programming. And lo and behold, about a week and a half before I was supposed to go, I started itching all over my body. And, so I'm thinking, okay, this is crazy. And let me just preface this by saying, 1, I have really good health, and 2, I have a high tolerance for pain. And so what I thought, someone had treated my yard, with chemicals to get rid of the weeds and all that kind of stuff. I'd gone to the mailbox and I'd picked up the sign out of my yard that said, "We treated your yard today." So in my, infinite medical wisdom, she said jokingly, it was I've come in contact with something, I've got an allergy, so I don't have a primary care physician, and I didn't have one then, and because I never went to the doctor because I was healthy. And so I went to the drugstore, and they gave me Benadryl and cortisone cream, and they said, if this doesn't clear this up in 3 days, go see somebody. So not having a doctor, I went to one of the doc in the boxes, and what they initially diagnosed is you probably have a gallstone, right? Because, I don't know. I can tell you now, I've learned a lot about this, is that is what allows the bile to go out of our systems through the gallbladder and out the bile and into our intestines and out our bodies. And so if it gets blocked, the bile backs up in our blood system, our blood flow.
Okay.
And that was causing itching all over.
Okay,
so that's the lay of the land. He sends me to get a sonogram. Well, if that was 11 years ago, I was 58 years old. I'd never had a sonogram because they didn't give you those when you were having babies back when I was having babies.
Right.
So I go. They took about an hour and a half, and I didn't know if there was. I didn't think there was anything wrong with that. Lo and behold, it usually takes about 10 minutes, but they're really poking around on me down here. And so then I get the call from the doctor when he gets the results at the doc in the box, and he says, come in and see me. And I'm like, I don't have time to come in and see you.
Just tell me.
And yet, here we go. There's that nagging little voice that says, okay, maybe I need to go talk to him. I'm trying to get out of the country. Do I really just take the gallstone out, just be done with it, and let me get on with my life? But I paid attention because I trusted my intuition, because something was just a little awry. So I go. He tells me that I have a 3-centimeter tumor on my ampullary duct, which is where your pancreas comes into, it connects to your pancreas, then to your colon. So long story, hopefully a little shorter, is I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, which I didn't know, but has a 6% mortality rate.
Yes.
So, because you usually don't have symptoms until it's stage 4. So because the ampullary duct, for all those who are watching, my left index finger is touching my right index finger. And this is the bile duct, my right hand, and the ampullary duct is my left hand. The tumor was large enough in my ampullary duct to block my bile duct. That's what gave me symptoms, not the pancreatic cancer in and of itself.
Wow.
So I trusted that I needed to actually follow up and go do a doc, in one of the doc in the box places. I trusted that I needed to go in and hear what he had to say, and I trusted him when he then referred me to a surgeon, and I subsequently went through a 13-hour Whipple surgery, taking all of that out, a third of my pancreas, the ampullary duct, 6 inches of colon, my gallbladder, my gallstone, all that, and was in the hospital for 13 days, and I refused to be one of the 94% who don't make it. And so here we are today, 11 years later.
Oh my
and I just say, all of that was the nagging and the tugging of my instinct going, this ain't business as usual.
Right.
Do what the doctors are telling you to do, which I've been known not to do that so much.
Yeah.
So that's my story.
Okay. I've lost my. Whoa. Okay. So did you have to? Did you have to go through chemo or radiation or any of that, or did they completely?
I did not. So it was what's called an encapsulated tumor.
Yeah.
They checked every other part of my body and said it had not spread because I caught it in a first stage.
Oh my
God!
First
You
stage.
didn't take the trip
Gosh.
first.
Well, right, because I was going to countries who are not known for their medical capabilities.
Right. Yeah.
One was an emerging third world country, and one was only recently would be considered a mid-level, country.
Right.
Okay.
And so I wouldn't have had the care. I wouldn't have had the ability to treat it sooner rather than later to make sure it didn't get
my
worse than
goodness.
it was.
Thank God.
Wow. Okay. On to better topics. LaRue, our listeners know that we love to start our podcast with definitions. So what is your definition of intuition?
Intuition to me is knowing what you know without knowing how you know it.
I love that definition. We know it.
Yep.
We do know it with all our heart and all our
And
being.
we have no proof of how we know. Right. We have nothing to base it on. We just know.
Right. Okay. So that the phrase that's coming to mind for me is digested knowledge. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily a thought that just comes out of the universe, but it's something that comes from within us.
Absolutely.
So
digested knowledge, which I talk about in the book, Marsha's book, is typically what scholars would say is that intuition, their definition of intuition is it's things we've experienced long ago that come to the forefront when it's needed. That's not what I'm talking about. To me, that's not true intuition.
Okay.
True intuition, again, is knowing what you know without knowing how you know it. Like Marsha had never been through that cancer scare before. Her mind, which I think mine would have made it up too when you go to the mailbox and they've sprayed the pest, you would think logic would say, well, I'm just itching from that. But something deeper inside her.
That's right.
Said, I better go to the doctor. I'm getting on a flight. I better go.
Yeah.
There was some urgency probably to it, wasn't there?
Absolutely.
And she listened.
So a question for both of you. What do you think is the benefit of listening to your intuition in a workplace environment?
Oh, go ahead.
Well, this is one. I have so many thoughts rambling in my head with this question. So one is that when we talk about our authentic power and our authentic path, if I'm in a work situation and I feel like there's a certain way, a certain strategy, a certain process, a certain methodology, and I don't know why I know it, but this one's different. I may have done something similar or routine several times, and yet something about this makes it different. So I need to move faster, or I need to include this party that's never been included before, or I need to do a little further research on something else, right? So those are the things that come to my mind that says if I trust those things. And the contrast I want to say is it's kind of like leave your feelings at the door, right? And so this is a feeling, right? It's not a piece of data, or it's not a white paper or a competitive analysis, or some of the things that we are often asked to produce in order to support what we're thinking or planning or proposing to do. But this is one that says, again, I can't tell you why I know it, and yet I want to trust my feelings or my instincts on this one.
Okay. LaRue?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it helps us make successful decisions. And like you were saying, like decisions on the fly where you don't have a lot of time to do research sometimes on certain things, And, again, scholars, mentioning scholars in, fancy business schools, they have these models for making decisions, right? But I've heard someone, a professional recently say that those models are kind of out the door these days because we have, with social media and things, everything is happening so fast. Right.
Yeah.
We can't use
you
those
can't break out
anymore.
a framework.
No, you can't.
Or you can, but it only captures a point in time, which is now quickly blown by.
That's it.
And you're getting lots of resistance for it, too.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think, too, LaRue, what makes this so timely is pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, right? So the rules of life have changed accordingly. And even while people were going through the pandemic, you didn't know what to do because we had never been there. Right. So there were no answers. Even if you wanted to go find answers, you couldn't. And so that's what I love about what you're describing is there's not a rule book. There's not a let's do a benchmark or let's do a best in class or something like that. We got to do it. We got to do it now. And there's no precedent. So we got to make it up. And trusting our instincts isn't necessarily making it up, and yet it can look like that to other people.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, it looks like we're just on the fly, right? But it's really, if you're following that deeper thing that's coming from deep within your being, yes.
So I have a note here about the 6 distinct ways intuition communicates with you. Yeah. LaRue, let's talk about that.
Talk about them?
Yes,
okay.
Let's talk about those.
So we'll do a high level of them. I'll go into a couple of deeper ones later, urge and inspiration. But the first one is urge. And it is an inner nudge to do something or not do something.
Okay.
And then there's snapshot click. And a snapshot click is like the connecting points of your life. Like, it's like things, well, I'll go into it more later.
Okay.
And then there's wonderment, which is the presence of awe. Right? Do you feel that?
Wide-eyed wonder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right? And inspiration is the energy of creation.
Okay.
And then there's no time and no space. It's where there's no time in expanded space, where time collapses and there's this sense of spaciousness.
Okay.
So those are the 6 ways.
Okay. Let's go a little deeper into all of these.
Okay.
So I'll let you start with the first one, urge, that nudge that guides you.
Okay. So urge is it's something that you can feel as maybe Marsha felt it when she went to
the one I connect with. Yes.
to the doctor. It's a nudge, and a magnetic pull.
Okay.
That wants you to take a certain action or avoid a certain action.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
We have them all the time.
Okay.
All of these things I'm talking about, everyone has experienced. It's just that we're highlighting them here so that you can go, oh, oh, I really need to not ignore that next time.
Right.
Right.
Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And so that's the power of urge, and it's always there.
Okay.
And I just want to say for our listeners as well, when we think of nudge, there's a physical push, right?
Right.
I mean, so that's
Right.
that's the one we think about when we say nudge. Or people are trying to nudge me with words or, influence me in some way. This isn't those things.
No.
It's from inside of me, and it's not a physical push, or it's not someone externally trying to influence me. There's something inside of me. It's almost like you said, that magnetic pull that's pulling me to something, or if it's pulling me this, it's because it's pulling me away from that.
Yeah, good
Right.
point.
Yeah.
Very
Right.
good point.
So I mean, I want to differentiate those
Yeah.
in that way.
Yeah.
It's an inside out job.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Snapshot click.
Ah.
Let's go deeper on that one.
This connects all the points in your life. It's kind of like there's the snapshot, the event that happens. It's a significant event or a memory in your life that stands out from the background. It could be even a conversation with someone. It could be lyrics to a song you're listening to that resonates with you, and you notice yourself singing it over and over, or kind of in your head or whatever. There's something significant about that
Okay.
that you really need to pay attention to, right? And so then the click comes, and you don't know. It could come quickly. It could come 20 years from now. But when the click happens, you'll go, oh, now I know why that happened.
Ah, okay. Okay.
So here's the visual image that I get. You know how you can take pictures and it's blurry background, but
The foreground is
the
super
foreground is
clear.
really clear and all
Right.
that kind of stuff.
That's
That's what I think of. There's a lot of stuff going on in that background place, but this one it becomes crystal clear to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just stands out. It's almost like it's all you notice,
Right.
you know?
So I have a quote from the book that you wrote. She contributed
Yes,
mainly.
yes,
So
yes.
I want to just pull this out. Is it something? Did this experience possibly come to you in a dream, during a meditation, a recurring image that you can't even explain, or a memory from the past that won't go away? A snapshot click could be a single experience or many experiences woven together over time, and then it clicks into place. So, what are the 3 steps of this snapshot click experience?
Okay. All right. Well, the first one is to locate the snapshot,
Okay.
right? And that's where you recall a memory or an event where something stood out. Like, the background was blurred, but it was highlighted, in some way. And you're going to write down what was significant, what stood out to you about that, right? And the number 2 is to locate the click. And again, you may not be, if it just happened, you may not be able to locate the click right now. The click might come a few years from now. One happened for me when I found my purpose. It's like, oh, that court reporter on career day in high school.
Right.
Oh, that's what that was about. But that was 10 years later, right? Without going into the story.
Right.
Was the click like, oh, that was significant. Like, I don't remember anything else about that day except that court reporter coming. And I thought I was going to be a court reporter.
Oh,
right?
got it. Got it.
And so, and I went, that was my next step anyway in my evolution, was to take that step. And it clicked for me 10 years later, like, oh, this was now guidance saying, pay attention to this. This is going to be important to you in the future so that you can take the right step.
Right.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And then the third one is to locate the message. And again, in my example, I didn't get the message until 10 years later.
Right.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
There's always a message. So sometimes, and that's when it clicks, right? Is when or actually when it occurs in your life, it's like, oh, okay, that's why it happened. And it's like a puzzle piece. It kind of all
Just
comes
drops
together at
in.
that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Any comments, Marsha?
No,
Okay.
I'm following. I'm thinking yes. So
Okay.
that's where I am. Yeah.
All right. Let's
Memories.
Yes.
Yeah.
let's talk about the third one, wonderment. What's the difference between? I have in my notes here that there's 2 different types of wonderment. Let's talk about that.
Oh, I love this one. It's
Okay.
so fun. So there's spontaneous, I call it wondering, right? Spontaneous wondering, where we're just wondering about something, right? And then there's deliberate wondering about something.
Okay.
So spontaneous wondering is you're going about your life and you just, well, I wonder how Mary I haven't seen in 20 years is, right? Or I wonder, where I'm going to get some good vitamins or whatever. And that wondering, you're not planning on going to look for the answer. You're just wondering.
Right.
And a few days or a few hours or a few minutes later, that person calls you. Right?
Okay, you're smiling.
This happens to me quite a bit, actually. Yes, they call, or you see the email in your inbox. Yeah.
And when they call, you need to answer because you've already wondered about them. So you're probably not going to let that go to voicemail unless you just absolutely can't answer, right? But you're going to contact them because there was a divine thing trying to connect the two of you. Right? So you don't want to ignore that because who knows what magic can come from that or what important information. And then deliberate wondering is very intentional. It's where you have a problem that you don't know how to solve. You have a question you need an answer to, and you're racking your brain and you don't know how to answer the question. So you can just, I wonder what the solution is. I wonder what, the answer is. And you let it go.
Wherever it goes.
Wherever it goes. Because the power of wondering is when we're wondering and, wonderment, when we're in awe, there's no attachment. Do you notice how free you feel? How expanded you feel? Right. And so you just let it go. And when you let it go, then pay attention and then notice what you notice because something inside you, your intuition, your unconscious mind, whatever you want to call it, will say, you'll turn to something or you'll hear something. You go, oh, there's my answer.
Well, and I will tell you too, what I've experienced is I wonder how Mary's doing it. And I'll send Mary a little note. You were on my mind today. I was thinking about you. And she writes something back like, were your ears burning? Were you in the conversation I was in an hour ago? And I've been wanting to talk to you, and all of a sudden then everything flows from that. And what I've learned from this, especially since learning from LaRue, is if somebody's on my mind, if that's if I'm wondering how somebody is, send them a quick note. I don't know why, but I just have learned to do that, and it has turned out beautifully.
You get confirmation every time, don't you?
Yes.
So do I. Yeah, and good for you that you're acting on that.
So give us an example of how this would apply in a work environment. I want to come back around to that you've had an idea, go from there.
Yeah. Okay. So you're at work, you've got a problem you need to solve, right? And you've tried every avenue to try to solve it. You've talked to your peers, your friends, your colleagues, whatever, your mentor, right, your coach, or whatever, right? And there's no solution. So what you can do is just say, I wonder what the solution is. Go home and go to sleep. And when you wake up in the morning, notice the first thought on your mind. Because your unconscious mind is going to be talking to your intuition, your soul, whatever you want to call that, because there are many names for intuition, right? And I would be surprised if the answer isn't on your mind the first thing when you wake up.
Wow.
So for anyone who knows me, this is one of those where I coach people to say, you've given one of your team members something to do, and they bring it back to you, and they say, well, what am I supposed to do about this? Well, instead of me just automatically giving them the answer, I say, well, what do you think we ought to do about this? And they say, well, I don't know. If I knew, I wouldn't have come to you. So someone taught me this a long time ago, and I made this connection with LaRue's work. I then asked them, if you did know, what would you say? Right? So, because and you know what? 99 times out of 100, they have an answer.
That is so brilliant, Marsha.
Because it is up to them. For whatever reason, they're not comfortable telling you what they're really thinking, or they may think it's incomplete, or you'll think it's silly, or it's something you've never done before. And yet if I give them the invitation based on my wonder, if you did know, I mean, it's a simple question. If you did know, what would you say?
And I love how that question is a validation.
Yes.
It's first validating whatever is going to come out of their mouth, and therefore it allows them to have the space to express whatever it is that might have, and I'm wondering if I wonder if it's not true that they really didn't know until they got that question, and then it came out.
Yeah. It's true. Our mind doesn't know. Our soul does. And so that's the brilliance of the question, is it elicits the soul, and it cuts through the mind. It's like, well, if you did know. Right. It's a brilliant intuitive question. If you did know. And that invites the intuitive wisdom to come forth.
Right. Because our brains can say, that's not logical. That's not, practical. Yeah. That's not, doable. All of that. And yet when it comes from that deeper place, all things are possible. Mm-hmm. That's what I love about it. All things are possible.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the fifth of the 6 distinct ways is what you call the experience of inspiration, the energy of creation. Tell us more about that.
Oh, man. When you're inspired, have you ever been inspired and did it cause depression, like immediately?
Yeah.
Right? No. It gives you energy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When we're inspired, it's like we can go from 0 to 100, right? We're just filled with energy, and it's an energy to act, to create, to do something, to make something happen, right? Mm-hmm. And again, to me, it comes from our inner being, our soul. The root word of inspire, you think about inspire, is to breathe in life. Mm. Right?
Yeah, because to expire is to die.
Right.
Inspire is to breathe in life.
Yeah. And so when we're inspired, man, we're fully alive. Life force energy is flowing through our body, and we can create things that we could never do without that.
And I think about the attraction of that. If I am inspired and I can speak in captivating ways, people are like, I want to be on your team. Yes. I want to follow you. I want, what is the line from Harriet When I want what she's having.
Yeah.
I want to be a part of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that is you. When I think of Marsha, that's what I think. Mm-hmm. You're so inspiring, and I hear that from people all the time.
Yes. I agree. I agree. So, LaRue, share your personal story about what compelled you and inspired you to actually write your book.
Yes. Well, not only, later did it inspire me to write my book, but it got me in my life's purpose. Mm. And what had happened is I was in a very dark time. This is in the 80s. I was depressed and, in a really bad place, and really needed a makeover for my life. And a friend of mine had been to a workshop the night before, and she called me the next day and she said, LaRue, you got to go to this. There's another free event next week. This is what you're looking for to change your life. And as I said earlier, truth resonates. And when she said that, I felt something. Mm. I felt a joy come alive that I hadn't felt inside myself in years. And I could hardly wait. It was a whole week I had to wait for this event, but I went there and experienced this methodology, and it changed something in me that night, because I volunteered for them to work the process on, right? I left there that night going, that's not only what's going to fix me, it's my life purpose. And I knew it, and no one could talk me out of it.
Wow.
And so years later, I ended up writing a book as a result of being on this path.
And the name of the book is?
Your Essential Whisper, 6 distinct ways to recognize, trust, and follow your intuition with absolute certainty.
Ooh.
So I also want to say, you spoke about that from an inspiring standpoint, but one of the ones I'm assuming we're going to talk about next is the knowing.
Yes.
You knew you were supposed to go to that a week later. I mean, something in you said go.
I did.
Yeah.
Couldn't shake it. It's all I could think about. It was not, couldn't shake a horrible feeling. It was like, couldn't shake and didn't want to shake a wonderful feeling away. Yeah. But it was like every day, it's all I thought about. I could feel my life was about to change finally.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah.
After years of depression.
Wow.
And that was my knowing. And then when I left there that night, I also had a knowing, like, I'm going to do what that woman does. Mm. I knew it. I had no money. I convinced her to train me with no money, and I said, I'll pay you after I graduate. And I did. And I opened an office right away and paid her back. I don't know how in the world, but it was meant to be, is all I can say.
Yeah, exactly.
She trained me.
That's right.
On a loan, so to speak.
Wow. Well, a quote from your book is, when the energy of inspiration arrives, you must act on it. Decide right now to choose inspiration over fear and doubt. You want to expound on that?
Yeah. Well, once we've acted on inspiration a few times and had some good experiences from it, it catalogs it in our brain as that's a really, really good thing to do. In the very beginning, if we're not used to doing that, we need to make a choice that we're going to act on this stuff, right? Because that energy is given to you for a reason.
Right.
Right? And if we don't act on it, we can miss an opportunity. We can miss our path and our purpose. I mean, what if I hadn't gone to that event that night?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you were too depressed, or too
'Cause I was
sad,
too
or
depressed
it
to
was
go.
Too dark, or I just
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
not feeling it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or like
Yeah.
nothing ever turns out good for me, so why
Right.
should I bother?
Right.
I know I got
Right.
excited, but why go?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And I want to say too, when I think back at what this story is prompting me to think about, is when I first started the Power of Self program, everybody was saying, I felt like I was the little puppy dog. Really good idea. And it would be like they'd pat me on my head and say, and I almost heard them muttering as they walked away, good luck with that, because how are you going to monetize it? Nobody's going to buy that. And we were ahead of our time, but it was a knowing
Yeah.
that knew that. And there was a bit of, I would guess, so check me on this, the snapshot click, because I'd been a woman growing up in a very male-dominated, and I knew I would have loved to have somebody play a role like I was about to play in other women's lives. I'd been to a program where, once again, outside of my workforce, this is one of our earlier Cape Cod Coup episodes, way back in the earlier days of our podcast, where the women, once again, our voices got quieted and we were pushed to the side and all of that. And then, this idea of, I have an opportunity to start my own company. What do I want to do? And all of those things that had happened over the years came into focus in ways that they had never done before.
It's a perfect example of a snapshot click.
And knowing.
And knowing. And something I haven't said already is that these 6 ways that we're talking about today, sometimes you can have all of them in the same event.
I was going to ask if you could have multiples at the same time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Our intuition doesn't work like our logical mind where it's this or this,
Right.
white
Right.
or black.
Linear, single focused.
Right.
Yeah, you could have them all. I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't have all of them somehow involved in that.
I wouldn't be at all surprised either.
Yeah.
There was a nudge to make it happen, even when people say it. We're saying that why? Why would I spend money on that? Why would I prioritize that? Why would I put that in the budget?
But you knew better.
I knew, and there was something nudging me inside, and things came clearer in the snapshot focus. So
And these women appreciate your suffering so you could come and help them later.
Yeah.
I mean, they do appreciate you.
I know.
Yeah.
And I love and appreciate them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Trailblazing is tough.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
tough.
It's tough.
So the 6th distinct experience is known as no time or altered time and space in the here and now. What's involved in that?
Well, have you ever had a time, Wendy, when you're so engrossed in something, or you're in a conversation, or you're doing a task or whatever, and you look up and hours have gone by, and you go, wow, where did the time go? You've just had an experience of being so fully present that time has disappeared. Because see, time is created by the mind.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so,
Structure.
yeah, you've so associated with your inner being, if you will, and gotten so out of the mind, although you're using your mind to do whatever, talk or write or whatever. But you're so associated with your inner being that time collapses. And when time collapses and you're so present, it's impossible not to hear and recognize your intuition when you're that present. Because you don't have the busy mind trying to talk you out of it.
Right.
You're just there.
Wow.
Well, and you're not even trying to find words that will convince others, because you don't care about the others.
Right.
I am so immersed in having my own experience that's not, this is getting me to that place where I can know what I know.
That's right.
So if you're in this place of you know what you know, my next question is, how do you convince others of that? Like, say you're in this situation in a work environment and you've had the big enlightening aha moment, but the rest of the team is over here bumbling around in the weeds. How do you translate that, communicate that, pull them along?
To be able to bring others with you as
Exactly.
you move forward with whatever you know.
Yes.
Is that,
Yes, that's my question.
Yeah. Well, it's a little trickier when you're involving others, right? Because when it's just you and your own life, then okay, fine, right?
Right.
That's easy. But when there are other people, it's a very good question, Wendy. first of all, you don't want to try to convince them.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's a push energy, a force energy, and they're going to push back, right? So what I like to do is I like to, again, go intuitive and ask for guidance in how to do this. How do I proceed with this? Maybe, if I can, if it's not an immediate thing that needs action, again, I can sleep on it. I can take my time. What would be the approach? Is there something I can do? And usually it will come, well, I don't know about usually, but oftentimes there will be a question that you can start to engage people. Like you used a good example earlier with people. You'd ask them a question. If you did know or whatever. Yeah. But a question, because then they've got the floor, right? They've got the power to answer that question, and it gets them to start thinking, because a lot of times we just need to get them on the same page, and what's happened is they're on an old paradigm page.
Exactly.
And so with questions, you're not telling them, you're asking them, and you can help them start to see if they're willing.
Right.
Well, remember how I talk about powerful questions start with what and how?
Right.
So this is a little bit in the, what would that look like? How would that work? How could we make that happen? What would be required? So am I...
Yeah, perfect. Perfect.
What and how questions are I think, helpful. Excuse me. To help us in that, the sixth one, I don't know. I just think I love the idea of questions, and yet I'm having a split screen experience here, if you will. And let me just explain myself. So if I can't give you all the data and all that kind of stuff, and so I'm going to ask questions, that's a powerful use of questioning. If I have a point to make, and I make it as a declarative statement, that's when others either limit, squash, defend. It becomes, who do you think you are, and why do you think that would work? And all of the who, why questions come in, which are often more derogatory, but the how and what keeps the possibilities open. I guess that's where, as I process this out loud, that's where I kind of want to go. It's what and how keeps the possibilities open, and we get to explore further rather than defending or minimizing or any of that.
Yeah, and sometimes, Wendy, and that's great, Marsha, I've seen that when you take that approach, the original idea that you had a knowing about, sometimes when you get group involvement, that idea can expand to
even
something
further.
greater or even different.
Yep.
But you birthed an idea so that you could birth the conversation to get the bigger idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or solution.
Yeah. Well, I know that two of these distinct ways you wanted to go a little bit further on, LaRue, the urge and knowing. So let's shift to talk more about those.
I kind of went a little deeper on the urge a little earlier. So why don't we go to, but just as a reminder, urge we talked about is that nudge, that tug, that magnetic pull or repulsion. This is don't do this or do that, right?
Right.
And the knowing. Okay, let's go to that one. I love knowing, because knowing is a resonance of truth, where you just know something, you don't know how you know it. And we're not talking about that I know mine, like I know, don't tell me, right? Not that. I know, I've already heard that, right? Or It's a deeper thing than that. And there's a presence to it. Right, and it doesn't come from up here. It comes from below the neck, right, in the body. It's a feeling, and you can't explain it. You don't know how. I'll give you a good example. So we're here in Texas, right, and you remember the ice storm in 2021, right? Around Valentine's.
Yes, 22nd week of February. I remember well.
We'll never forget it, will we? 6 weeks before that, I was awakened by a force at about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and my body just propelled out of bed. And I saw on a mental screen an image of a camping stove with yellow writing. Now, I don't camp, ladies. I shouldn't even know what a camping stove is. And I had this other flash, the simultaneous flash, of being in a dark, cold house, my home, and it was freezing inside.
Oh, my goodness.
And I was propelled to order a camping stove. And it's like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going... My logical brain is going, I am sleepy. This is ridiculous. I'll order it in the morning. I'm not going to order it all. And I start to crawl back into bed, and I felt this feeling of regret. Like, you're going to regret this. You're going to regret this. So I stumbled to my office, Googled, and up came. The first thing that came up was a black camping stove with yellow letters. I kid you not. It looked exactly
Like what was in your vision.
And I just did add to cart.
Right.
6 weeks later, I had no power for 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
It was near freezing temperatures in my house. I could heat water in tea and soup. And the week before, I intuitively made a pot of soup and froze it into individual bags.
Oh my goodness.
And that's how I ate and how I stayed warm. I would drink my tea or my soup, get under the cover, and I would perspire. I never was afraid of freezing because I knew I was liquidated. I was warm. I didn't have to drink ice cold water, freezing water. I think it saved me.
Wow.
And that was a knowing. Now,
Yeah.
I remember thinking, we're in Texas. The power grid's not going down.
I know. And it's
worry
definitely
about
not
hot
going to
weather,
get
not
that
cold
cold.
weather.
Yeah,
Right,
it's not going to get that
right.
cold.
But some aspects, 6 weeks, it was December 31st of 2020, I ordered that thing. I went
Wow.
on Amazon the other day and looked. 6
Wow.
weeks ahead of time.
And I do just think about that because after that polar vortex, as we called it, or there was a waiting list for generators because now everybody wanted generators or camping stoves or whatever it might have been after the fact.
Yes.
But the fact that you knew so clearly that far in advance and acted on your knowing.
I tell you what, I could not act on it because, like I said, I started to crawl back in bed. I was tired, right? It was a ridiculous thought. But the feeling of regret that came over me, it's like, you're going to regret this. This is going to be one of the biggest regrets of your life.
Now, and Wendy, because you've seen LaRue in action.
Oh, yes.
I just want to say to our listeners and viewers, you may be going, oh, that stuff's so woo-woo. I don't know what she's talking about. Or you might be saying, well, I kind of get that. Or you might be going, oh, my gosh, you know my life. It could be any and all of those things. Even the most skeptical women that have come through the program, because I don't include you in our the co-ed programs that I do, because I know for women this takes on a whole nother level of importance and that sort of thing. So by the end of the hour and a half, 2 hours that we give LaRue in class, everybody's sold on it because she brings and demonstrates. There's some things she can do that we'll have to
It's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing. It is mind-blowing. And you can't deny it when you've seen it firsthand, or when you've been the one that says, I'm going to volunteer because I can show her that I can break, this.
Yeah.
And they never do.
Right.
I mean, so for 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, whatever it is, they've never broken it. And that, then
It's
they're
never
like,
been broken. All over the world where I've done it.
it's like, okay, I give. There must be something to this. And so I just want to offer that to our listeners that says, if you're having a bit of skepticism about any of this, or it's a little too woo-woo or out there or any of that kind of stuff. And for some of our listeners, I also want to offer this. Remember the quote from Wayne Dyer that, and this is one of my favorites too. It's that we speak to God in prayer. God speaks to us through intuition. And when I begin to put that in not a wayward, out there skepticism kind of way, if your faith is strong and you think this is too alternative to all of that, maybe if you put it in the framework of we speak to God through prayer and God speaks to us through intuition, it might give you, it might invite you to explore the possibilities.
Yeah.
And notice.
Beautifully
And
said.
notice.
And notice, exactly.
So talk to us, LaRue, as we're starting to wrap up here, about the resonance of truth.
Well, you've had experiences in your life where you heard something and it felt right and true.
Mm-hmm.
See, truth resonates, right? It just does. You just know it's true. A lie, you can also feel it just feels off. Something just feels off, and we must pay attention to those things, particularly in the day and age that we're living in right now, right? But truth resonates, and you can always trust truth.
And I think about it from a centeredness and groundedness place. If I'm centered and grounded, I can receive something and really more clearly see whether it resonates with me or doesn't resonate with me.
Oh, I love that you said that, because you know we live in a busy world and a busy society, and it's so easy to just move on and move on instead of taking a breath, taking a moment to tune in, to center, or take 3 minutes to just sit in a chair and just breathe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's a good way to access it. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you've got to quiet yourself to the point. This is the slow down to speed up. You have to quiet yourself so you can hear it, feel it, sense it, notice it in a way that you can if you're just always on the go, go, go.
That's right.
Yep. So I think our listeners and our viewers would love to experience a LaRue exercise. So will you walk us through one of your intuitive exercises as we wrap up?
Let's walk you through knowing.
Okay.
Okay. Because we've all had it. That's a common one, we all have. So think of a time where you can even close your eyes for this if you want to. Think of a time when you knew something, and it might be a memory or an experience you had. You knew something, but you didn't know how you know or how you knew.
Okay.
All right, got that? Mm-hmm. And feel what that felt like in your body to know that. Where did you feel it? Did it come from your head? Did it come from outside your body? Or did it come inside your body? Like, what did it feel like? Where did you feel it? Right, you got that?
Got it.
Right? And is that different from an intellectual knowing?
Oh, yes.
Does it come from a different location?
Yeah.
Do you make the distinction? Right. So again, this is one of those getting centered feeling exercises where you can tune into by just reliving a time where you experienced a knowing or you had an urge, and you kind of review it and think back there. Where did you feel it? How did you feel it? And and then you start to go, wow, this is really valid. This is really real because you've already lived all of these.
Right.
All of them.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here thinking about, one, the book, The Body Keeps the Score, because that's one where it's not just listening to our knowing, our body is telling us something. So what the connection I make, LaRue, is how is the intuitive knowing different than the intellectual knowing? What are you feeling differently? Here, there's this logical pride of I have 3 supporting bullet points, right, for what I think I know.
Exactly.
I've done my research. But the warmth and the certainty with which I hold myself when it comes from that intuitive place, it's not a prideful knowing or a logical knowing or a rational knowing. But the warmth goes throughout my body. So if I begin to understand what happens in my body when I'm having an intuitive moment, that can enable me to connect with that and utilize that moment, that feeling, that intuition, that experience in a more productive way.
That is perfect. And thank you for saying the word warmth, because when we're in our knowing and we're experiencing our intuition, there is a warmth that is present, a peaceful warmth inside.
Well, and what I was taught, even when we started doing women's programs, is that if you are freezing to death, and we always had a bucket of blankets, right? In every class
I remember the
ever did,
blankets.
bucket of blankets. And how many people would go get, and it could be like it is today, 100 degrees outside. And it wasn't just that the air conditioner was running, on a low temperature. And there would be women in there that were both fanning themselves, right? Because it was warmth.
Yeah.
And there would be people that would literally be in the fetal position covered up with a blanket. And I was told that means there's something happening for you when you have that kind of coldness. Lean into it. Take care of yourself. I mean, that kind of thing. Yeah. But just notice that. And so I just, once again, I always learn, I just made that connection as
That's
well.
beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Snapshot click.
Okay, so I want to just kind of start wrapping up here. I love, LaRue, that you've been talking about the polarity of both intuition and logic and how we need to work with both of those to be successful leaders. So as we're wrapping up, give us some final thoughts about both holding these polarity ideas at the same time.
We've been conditioned and through education to be more, analytical, right? And to ignore our intuition because, again, there's no proof, right? But you think about it. We have a right brain and a left brain. We have an analytical and a creative brain. And as far as I know, they're pretty equal in size.
Yep.
Why would our Creator give us this beautiful creative brain and we're not supposed to use it?
Right.
Right? Imagination is the key to intuition, right? And so I believe that we need to use, yes, if you've got an important decision to make, there's something coming up, gather the facts, get the data, use your left brain, right? And then run it by your intuition.
Right. I love that. Let them review it and see
Let
how
it
it
review it.
settles.
And then
Yes.
see how it settles. And you might, come up with a better idea or whatever. But you use both.
Right.
Not either or.
Well, I'll tell you the story that this reminds me of, and Gary Rudine, if you're listening, this is a story for you. When I first went to work from engineering, left brain dominant, all of that, right? And I used to bring him ideas. And he would say, well, where's the evidence? Where's the data to support your idea? And this was back in the days before everything was data-driven, evidence-based in decision-making. And I agree with you. We got to have some of that. But he would say, you have to triangulate the data. Oh my! And I'm like, what the heck does triangulate mean? Okay, what does that mean? You need to bring me 3 sources that corroborate why you're doing what you're doing, kind of thing. Well, and I say this in all my classes, we know we can go find out we can find whatever data we need to support. That's
right.
And so what I learned is I had these ideas. They were good ideas because we implemented lots of them and they got the results I intuited they would because we'd had no evidence that they would. And yet I knew, right?
Yep.
And so I'd go find the data to support it. And that's another variation. And it may be, I'll own this part, it may be a little bit of the manipulation of the balancing logic and intuition. And yet I somehow always found enough data to corroborate or support my intuition. So it legitimized it in every way.
Right.
For those who needed that.
Yes.
It was actually very smart of you to do that.
Exactly. Yeah. Because you can't just say, I've got a feeling that this is what we need to do.
Yes.
That really doesn't fly in corporate America.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it'll work.
Yeah,
Or with
exactly.
husbands.
Or with husbands.
Or with
That's right,
husbands.
too.
Yeah.
That's right, too.
I can hear that. That's going to be a new one for Scott. You need to triangulate your data points. It's going to be a new word in our house. Well, LaRue, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing with us how we need to tap into our intuition more.
Thanks for both of you for having me. It's been a fun conversation.
Yeah.
Your book again, title is
Your Essential Whisper.
Your Essential Whisper. Even that just is.
I love that.
I do too.
Love that. I love that. So any parting words of wisdom or main points as we wrap up here?
I have a statement from Mary Kay Ash, the founder of Mary Kay Cosmetics.
Well,
that
we're
I'd
here in
like
Dallas, so we love Mary Kay Ash.
to read. Yeah, exactly,
Yes.
right? Because she's from here.
Yes.
She says, I can't explain it analytically, but when the feeling is deep inside me, I know the right thing to do. I've talked about this sense with many women who say that although they can't explain it either, they've learned to trust it. Over the course of my career, I have worked with thousands and thousands of women. An objective observer would have predicted failure for a number of those who ended up succeeding. And relying on their instincts, they saw a path where no path had been charted, and they had the faith to take it. Their stories reaffirm my belief in women's intuition that has helped me so much.
Wow.
I love it. I really do. And, when you can push ahead in the face of all the logical odds that are out there, and when you have that knowing, when you feel that urge, when it's in your mind's eye, for whatever reason it is in, and how many ways and things have come together to create that, that's intuition at its finest. And I would, my parting words on this content is, how many times have you said to yourself, I wish I'd trusted my gut. I wish I'd trusted my intuition. I wish I would have trusted my instincts. And when I hear gut, instincts, and intuition, in my mind, those all kind of get blurred and are, synonymous. And the invitation here is to say, let's have no regrets, right? In that sense. And let's do trust it. And hopefully these are some ways where you can make it a bit more accessible.
Exactly.
And recognize it for what it is and then act accordingly.
Yeah. And it's validated now. We've just
That's
validated
right.
intuition
That's
for you.
That's right.
You can do it.
Right. Well, again, thank you both for being here today. Listeners, viewers, you got a treat with Miss LaRue Eppler today. So thank you for joining us. And please download, subscribe, and share this podcast with your network of friends. And please visit Marsha's website at marshaclarkandassociates.com for all the tools. Chapter 7 is where LaRue is the star. And finally, yes, check out her book and magnets on the website.
We have all of that. Yes. Listeners, viewers, thank you for joining us today. We cover a lot of different topics on here, and in my mind, at least, right, that they're all connected to us being powerful women, and trusting our intuition, to me, is a part of believing in our what we're hearing and knowing and sensing and feeling. Holding on to that power. Intuition is a power. Hold on to it. Don't diminish or denounce or criticize it away, judge it away. It is a source of power for us, and let's recognize that. Yeah. And as always, I leave our listeners and viewers with the "Here's to Women, Supporting Women."